Good morning from Port Canaveral, Florida. I'm Julia from NASA Space Flight, and we are here to see B1058.2 come back to port on Just Read the Instructions this morning. So what's already happened is that the tugs have gone out to meet the barge, and the crew transfer has already happened from GoQuest onto Just Read the Instructions so that they can assist when they dock. What's cool about this booster is it is the record-breaking booster. 51 days in between the flight of Demo-2, which launched Bob and Doug to the International Space Station, and being reflown on the Anasis-2 mission that happened earlier this week. What also is cool that we're going to see today is the NASA worm logo, from what I've heard, is still on that booster. So we'll get a nice close look at that. Stay tuned as we wait for this booster to come a little bit closer to port, and we're going to talk a little bit about what the return to the splashdown and return of Bob and Doug, what that might look like. Where's it going to happen? We'll talk more about that in a little bit. Stay tuned. So now that we've seen the booster come to port, I can tell you that we were unable to see if the NASA worm logo and meatball were present until I went for a little drive. But I was able to find it, and indeed B1058.2 does still have that meatball and worm. So let's talk a little bit about Demo Mission 2 and Bob and Doug coming home. At this point, I'm not exactly sure where they're going. Guess what? Since I was in port filming the return of B1058.2 yesterday, something exciting happened. NASA put out a blog, and that blog was about the Demo-2 recovery mission. And included in that little blog was a nifty fact sheet. NASA provided 10 facts along with an in-depth fact sheet regarding what the recovery criteria are. The main question I have been asked is, where are the recovery zones and where did Go Navigator and Go Searcher, where are they going to go? There are actually 7 potential recovery zones that they have to choose from. 4 of them are located on the west coast of Florida, and 3 of them are located on the east coast of Florida. A few days ago, actually, Go Navigator did start the journey toward the Gulf of Mexico to support the 4 splashdown locations in that area, and Go Searcher should be leaving fairly soon to support the eastern range of recovery options. Which leads us to, how do they select those splashdown options, and what does each of those look like regarding the ships, the helicopters? Do they go to port? Do they go on a helicopter to shore? Where will they splash down? Well, that's going to depend on the primary and backup locations that are determined from the timeline that actually starts 1 to 2 days prior to the approximate departure. So 1 to 2 days ahead of their anticipated departure, which is at the moment August 1st, SpaceX and NASA will make a decision 48 hours prior based on the status of primary and alternate splashdown sites. 6 hours before undocking, NASA and SpaceX make a decision on the primary splashdown target. So we won't know exactly which is the primary target until 6 hours before undocking. 2.5 hours before undocking is another checkpoint where they will monitor changes to conditions until 2.5 hours prior, and then they will make a determination to proceed with departure. If conditions are marginal and exceed the accepted criteria, a joint recommendation by SpaceX and NASA will be made whether to proceed with undocking. At that point then, if all is clear or the criteria is acceptable or anticipated to be, they will proceed with undocking and make that final decision, which leads us to free flight. Crew Dragon will proceed with departure phasing burns as planned, even if conditions are marginal or no-go at any upcoming supported landing site and exceed the accepted criteria. So given that splashdown may be 24 or more hours away, weather can obviously change. And that may come into play with the tropical storm season happening right now, and the potential actually for us on the Space Coast to be impacted by a tropical storm that we're keeping our eye on right now as residents. So with that in mind, Dragon will always proceed with departure phase burns to preserve the supported splashdown opportunity. There is an opportunity for wave off as well. If conditions remain no-go at the supported splashdown site, SpaceX and NASA will jointly make a decision to wave off Crew Dragon. In that scenario, they can remain on orbit for the next landing attempt 24 to 48 hours later. 5 hours before deorbit, which is about 6 hours before splashdown, if conditions at the splashdown site are marginal and exceed the accepted criteria, SpaceX and NASA will make a decision about whether to proceed with deorbit. Crew Dragon claw separation, which is 1 hour and 20 minutes before splashdown. SpaceX will monitor changes to conditions throughout the decision to proceed with the deorbit burn, 30 minutes before claw separation prep, when a final determination to proceed with deorbit will be made. The claw is located on Crew Dragon's trunk, connecting thermal control, power, and avionics components located on the trunk to the capsule. So that's basically the very last check on the recovery checklist to give a go or no go. So once that claw separation has happened, it's kind of no turning back. There is some detailed recovery criteria to keep in mind as well. And that's what they'll be monitoring when they make those go, no-go decisions on the primary and backup locations. Helicopter start and hover tests. So there is a pass-fail test to confirm operational capability of the helicopter. And then operational helicopter limits would be pitch and roll no greater than 4 degrees. The ceiling can be no less than 500 feet and visibility no less than half a mile for day and 1 mile for night. So of those 7 locations, SpaceX will have, of course, Go Searcher and Go Navigator on station, and the 45th Space Wing will also have their units ready in case of any emergency need or additional support is needed. Those return locations, again, as I said, are mostly going to be determined by weather. Another factor is also the amount of time between undocking and splashdown based on orbital mechanics and splashdown opportunities that occur in daylight hours. So of course, daylight would be preferred. It is anticipated that it would take 45 to 60 minutes once Bob and Doug splash down for the SpaceX fast boats to deploy and recover them to bring them back onto the ship. What that looks like is one fast boat will deploy and go straight toward Bob and Doug to secure the capsule. Another fast boat will be deploying to go after the drogue chutes so that those can be recovered as well. Once they splash down, the big question is, well, first of all, will you be able to see it from land? Well, maybe. That really does depend on where they splash down. Now, the helicopter comes into play in most of these scenarios. Actually, 6 of the 7 scenarios involve the helicopter, meaning that Bob and Doug will come back onto Go Searcher or Go Navigator while they are on the capsule. The capsule will actually be lifted up onto Go Searcher or Go Navigator and placed in the nest. Once it is placed in the nest, Bob and Doug can come out of the capsule and they will immediately go into the medical staging area, which is much like how we welcome our astronauts home in Kazakhstan when they land on land. From that medical bay, then they can proceed to the helicopter. The helicopter will then bring them to shore, where there will be a waiting plane to bring them to Houston. The only scenario where the helicopter to shore and then airplane to Houston does not happen is if they splash down off the shores of Cape Canaveral. In that scenario, The splashdown zone actually ranges anywhere from approximately 22 nautical miles to 175 nautical miles. If they're at the 22 nautical miles, there is a chance we may see the chutes deploy. That also would be the one chance that we would have to see Bob and Doug actually return to Cape Canaveral before they would board a plane to go back to Houston. So a lot depends on 1 to 2 days before. And in our case right now, as we're looking at a potential tropical storm, that decision for the recovery zones, primary and backup, may not happen until 24 hours before, and they would still have reserved the right to not even deploy from the space station and undock. So we're going to have to see what that looks like, but hopefully this gave you a little bit better of an idea of why things happen the way they do and what that timeline looks like. In this case, would it be safe to plan a trip here to see Bob and Doug return to Port Canaveral? Probably not. That would be some very last minute decision making to make it here for that trip. In fact, those of us that live in Cape Canaveral, well, we're rooting for a Cape Canaveral return, but yeah, I don't think I'll be able to travel to one of those any other spots really to see the chutes deploy. Hopefully this recap gives you a little bit more of an insight into what recovering Bob and Doug will look like as they undock from the International Space Station and take their ride home on Endeavour. We can't wait to bring you coverage of that, whatever that may be, as we don't know quite yet where that's going to splash down. All of the information I was sharing with you today actually was a part of a NASA blog, and I will be making sure to link that in my Twitter feed. So again, thank you for supporting our YouTube channel. Your subscriptions and your memberships make videos like this one possible. Although not a live stream, I enjoy bringing you some facts in person instead of just in tweet form. So make sure you subscribe to our channel so that you get the up-to-date notifications of when we are going live for events like Return to Port, or of course Mary in Boca Chica bringing us all of that Starship news and everything that goes on every day. And thank you to Jack Beyer for doing our video editing for this one, and very much of what you see of Mary's videos as well. And of course, Brady, thank you for those beautiful thumbnails. I will see you again soon, possibly for another return to port, or maybe when we get to see Bob and Doug get recovered or Endeavour come back to Cape Canaveral. Y'all have a great weekend. Bye now.